When you shop GiantFood.com, you can order everything you need to spice up your meals, even if you don't do the cooking. Save time with fast same-day delivery and pickup from Giant.
This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
Out to the left side. Jaheim Bell's in the backfield. Fake inside. DeCarrion trying the right side. Cut back. Touchdown, Carolina. Touchdown, DeCarrion Joyner from 3 yards out. They faked to Jaheim in a great move from the senior from North Charleston. Puts the Gamecocks in the end zone, and they've got 55 on Tennessee with 9:26 to go.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you. That was the call on the Gamecocks radio network back in November, where DeCarrion Joyner scored one of the many touchdowns against the Tennessee Volunteers. Of course, he was on just a few minutes ago with the Garnet Trust Hour for the second time around. He enjoyed it so much, he decided to come in for a second edition of the Garnet Trust Hour. And Chris, so much to unpack from what DeCarrion had to say, but one of the things that you guys led off with, and we learned this in the media guide the other day, is the amount of weight that he has put on since the spring. And seeing him walking through here just the other day, looked bigger, looked healthier, and everything that he said is feeling good and ready to go for the season.
229 in the media guide. And I had to explain, Wes, to DeCarrion. You could tell he was kind of like going through it and like learning. He was teaching me about football. I was teaching him about the media side. So I had to explain to him how important the media guide is. When the new rosters come out, you can see the numbers for the newcomers. You can see the weights, who's gotten bigger, taller, smaller, shorter. Yeah, that happens sometimes. Every now and then you'll see the shorter. And he's like, oh, okay, I get it. But he said, I said, hey, can you confirm, are you 229? And he said, yes. He said, I may be 228 because of that workout we just had. Sometimes you lose a pound or two, but yeah, 229. He's holding it well. I mean, he looks pretty similar to me to what he looked like after the spring, where, what was he? I think
it was 215, 216, I think was his last listed weight.
Yeah, so he's put on even more.
But when did we talk to him?
Well, it was after the spring.
Yeah, he told us in here it was 225 then, didn't he?
Yeah, it was 225. That's right. Yep. So he's put on even a little bit more weight.
Yeah.
Even since the spring. And, looks good. And there were several things that DeCarrion mentioned to us where he's kind of at the peak. So feels the best that he's felt, healthiest he's felt, says he's the most explosive that he's been since he got here, and obviously the biggest that he's been since he's gotten here. And so for a guy that's had a lot, I mean, position changes, misusage sometimes, I think you could argue, or probably not even arguable. Injury concerns. I mean, there have been several years where DeCarrion's dealt with some injuries, even some that haven't really been reported or talked about. And everything is smooth sailing going into preseason, and you just got to hope that can keep up, particularly the health part of it.
I mean, that's the key for him. Yeah. That's a spot that, I mean, let's be honest, you get banged up at the running back position. Sort of everybody does, and you're kind of just hoping you can avoid the hit that keeps you out for a bunch of games, and that you can kind of manage and play through the bumps and bruises that come along with getting hit so many times at that position. So, I think pretty much everybody in Gamecock Nation is pulling for this guy. I think common maybe theme for the offseason has been guys playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think Joyner, I think in his day-to-day life, pretty laid-back guy. He's got his life together, but I think certainly as far as his own field mindset, there is a chip on his shoulder. There's some evidence of that. I know he responded to a guy on Twitter the other day who said he thought he was too small to be an every down back. I think he just responded with his weight to the guy. So everybody's pulling for DK. Hope he has a great year. I think he has found a home at that spot. In my head, I have officially put RB by his name.
Oh, I thought you were going to say RB1. Are you willing to go that far?
Well, I already went that far, didn't I?
You did. Well, I didn't know if you'd updated your thinking since the end of spring.
I'm just saying, I mean, officially, still a running back, or still a wide receiver.
I know. I don't get that.
So
that's another thing. I was explaining that to him in the media guide, too. Like, hey, your position. He was laughing, though, about the too small thing. When he came out of high school, he was 200 pounds, senior year. And certainly, looking at him, you go back and look at some pictures of him as a freshman or even that weight. That version of DeCarrion Joyner was not big enough to go back there and put as a between the tackles, every down type running back. But I don't know what the expectation. I mean, do you need to be 250 to be an every down running back? 229 is plenty. And he doesn't look like the biggest guy. Again, he holds the weight pretty well. But you can tell. You can tell he's gotten bigger. Looked pretty similar to me to what he did to end the spring. But he certainly looks bigger than sophomore year, even junior year, and he looks like a guy that can line up and play running back.
And obviously we've had the opportunity to hear from a couple of different guys on offense over the course of the past week, including Spencer Rattler and Josh Simon, and you did bring up what Josh Simon had said about the offense being like a well-oiled race car, well-oiled machine, and he, felt that that was a pretty apt description for it. Definitely going to be playing a lot faster. And like everybody we've heard from, DK seems pretty satisfied with all the concepts they've seen so far from D'Lo.
Yeah, it's been fascinating because, and I'm not surprised. Nobody's going to come in here and say, okay, on third down, this is what Coach Loggins typically likes. And you can expect, 40% of this particular formation. They're not going to give us that. And I think one reason for how the offense has been discussed in the offseason is because, it is still evolving to a degree. They're going to have things that they're working on during the player run practices. They obviously had things they're working on during the spring. But there are going to be some concepts that I think we're going to see consistently, constantly. And some of them are going to be things we saw last season. You don't have to scrap every single thing we saw last year. Some of it worked, obviously, particularly towards the end of the year. So you're going to take some of those things, you're going to keep them, and then you're going to add some other pieces, whether that's from the NFL, whether it's from Oklahoma, some of the things that Spencer Rattler liked at Oklahoma, and some of the things that worked out well last year. I think you're going to see some of those mixed. The interesting thing, here's one interesting comment that DeCarrion had about the offense. He said, don't get the impression that it's super easy, super simple. But he pointed out that he felt like the offense as a whole was studying even harder. And he did say that last year he felt like a lot of the turnover issues, which is an area that Shane Beamer has identified as being a critical area. Embarrassingly bad, Shane Beamer told a group of Texas high school coaches the other day. He said that basically they're kind of thinking and not really knowing the offense as well last year. That kind of led to some of that.
Guys, I would like to issue a retraction and a correction.
Okay.
I was going off of the still yet to be updated profile on Gamecocks Online.
Oh.
The media guide actually does list Dakereon Joyner as an RB. So,
okay.
All right, good.
So he is on here officially a 6'1", 229-pound running back in the media guide, which I think is the accurate way to describe his position.
I'm glad we settled that.
Hate when people make mistakes on the radio.
That was close. Yes. Why'd y'all do that?
Please forgive me.
No, it's okay.
He's a running back all the way. We joked about this with him at the end of spring, and I think we all thought maybe he wouldn't get the actual official move, but it is official. Even if you scroll down in the depth or in the there's not a depth chart in the media guide, there is a position by position listing of players, and Joyner also listed with the running backs there.
One other thing that he spoke about that I thought was pretty interesting, and Chris, you asked him about, the difference in catching out of the backfield, which he didn't feel like was going to be that big of a difference. If anything, he thought catching in a little bit of space, being able to use the athleticism, allowing guys to maybe miss a little bit more would kind of work well towards his skill set and what he's going to be able to do out of the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, for Dakereon, and he even said this himself, he's like, playing receiver, I was not a big deep threat. I was more of an intermediate type guy. And so I think catching the ball as a running back, yeah, you're going to have some wheel routes and some different things like that. But generally, you're going to be catching the ball, in the flat. You're going to be catching the ball over the middle of the field, intermediate type stuff. And so I think that suits his skill set a little bit better. And he's comfortable operating in those spaces close to the line of scrimmage, from his time playing quarterback as well. Pass protection, he pointed to, unsurprisingly, as being the biggest adjustment. And that's the case for him. That's the case for, you typically hear that being the biggest impediment to freshman running backs getting on the field is just the pass protection aspect of it. He said it was the most difficult. It's kind of the biggest learning curve. But, now you look at it, I mean, Dakereon made a pretty smooth, I think, in a relative sense, transition during the spring. But you got to remember, he's comfortable carrying the ball. He's been in the backfield. It's still a lot different what you're being asked to do as a running back. And he even pointed out during our talk, hey, like, I feel I was learning the position for the first time. Now he feels a lot more comfortable in the summer going through the player run practices. When he gets into preseason camp, he'll have a little bit more of a veteran feel, at that position.
Absolutely. Well, if you missed any of that conversation with Dakereon Joyner, it'll be up on our podcasting page on 107.5 The Game shortly. Coming up next, Jay just texted me. He is out at Radio Row at SC Media Days. We'll check in with him and see what's been going on this morning. I know Clark Lee just spoke to the media a few minutes ago. Kirby Smart getting set to take the podium in just a couple of minutes. So we'll check in with Jay out at Media Days. Coming up next on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Today is Tuesday, right, guys? I much more need you to confirm the day than I even need for you to confirm the sub of the day, because we know for a fact that when it is Tuesday, that it is Tyler's favorite sub: turkey, bacon, ranch. An excellent combination. I always say two of my three favorite things, really, in the world, bacon and ranch being the two. But you can get a $7.99 medium sub from Firehouse Subs or a $5.99 small. We suggest you just go ahead and get the medium for $7.99. Hit the Rapid Rescue, FirehouseSubs.com. Download the app. That way, it's very, very simple for you to save your favorites, handle your payment, then the sub will be waiting for you right there on the shelf, along with your chips. All you got to do is grab your drink, and you'll be on your way for lunch. It is 11:12 right now, so you're about to have to start thinking about lunch, probably going to hit that lunch break. A great way to starve off that hunger, and of course to stave off that hunger, I guess is probably the better way to say it, accurate way to say it. Firehouse Subs, I digress. Firehouse Subs, sub of the day, turkey bacon ranch, and our proud supporting sponsor right here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour.
All right, we'll check in with Jay from Radio Row coming up next on one.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Here on 107.5 The Game, Tyler, Wes, and Chris in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios in Columbia. It is day number 2 of SEC Media Days. Clark Lee has already spoken to the media. He's on the panel with SEC Nation right now, and Kirby Smart getting set to take the podium in a little over 10 minutes, and somebody that's going to be in attendance to hear what Kirby Smart has to say, our man on the street out there at Media Days, Jay Phillips, joining us now from Radio Row. Jay, they did a little sweep of the camera on the SEC Network a little bit earlier. I was disappointed that I did not get to see any of our 107.5 The Game guys on it.
Was the table empty? Did you see our logo? We just weren't here.
I didn't see the table. I guess they were on the other end, but I was hoping to at least get a glimpse of you guys. But I was disappointed.
Yeah, well, we'll try. We'll try. We're near one of their like remote sets here across from us on Radio Row. So I'll try to photobomb somebody if that's what you're really wanting me to do. Of course, my children would find out about it and disown me, so I don't need that in my life. And speaking of Kirby Smart, by the way, I think I'm going to go downstairs and sell my credential to Georgia fans.
Oh, are they?
Because I think
they infiltrate.
There's a couple I've seen. No, not really. There's a couple. I thought there'd be more fans here, but the thing is, we're so detached from them. We're on the second level, and fans can't. They literally can't get up here. So I think there's some fans in the lobby.
Well,
but, not too many.
I know when Media Days was out in Hoover, there was always the large contingent of Bama fans that would show up the day that Nick Saban speaks. I'm not guessing that the Vanderbilt contingent showed up quite as strong today for Clark Lee.
I didn't see any, but again, I didn't go down and look. It is kind of neat. I mean, I think this is the only time that a school doesn't have to travel for Media Days. I mean, even Bama has to travel a little bit from their campus to Hoover, or like last year from Athens to Atlanta. But anyway, but Clark is an interesting cat. Very soft-spoken, very mild-mannered. I tempering expectation, which I think is important. Some Vandy coaches I've seen through the years. James Franklin was here. Hey, we're looking to go undefeated. Pumping. And look, James had a better run at Vanderbilt than I think anyone expected. Probably even James Franklin, if he was truly honest with you. And obviously he's parlayed that into a good gig at Penn State where he needs to win a little bit more. But I appreciated what Clark Lee said this morning. Yeah, I tweeted it out. We're playing the long game. We're building here. We're developing here. He's got a guy he's known since 7th grade on his staff, so there's a lot of trust in terms of how they want to do what they do. I could see Clark Lee turning that into another job at some point, or I don't know. I don't know what you guys think or what fans think around the league, but I mean, tell me why Clark Lee over time, 4, 5, 6 years, couldn't begin to turn Vanderbilt into something akin to what Pat Fitzgerald did at Northwestern. And obviously here in the recent days and weeks, that has become a difficult situation, to say the least. But let's face it, I mean, he went to a Rose Bowl, man. They won games. They went to bowls at Northwestern. Again, the methods may not be appreciated, but the results are the results. So, yeah, what page can you take for a school like Vandy that has incredibly high academic standards and try to do that within the SEC? I don't know if you can, but Clark came from Notre Dame where they do the same thing. So we'll see. But, it was interesting. But yeah. Kirby's going to fire everybody up here in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Clark Lee did temper things down a little bit. I remember last year he did get himself in the papers, so to speak, because I think he had the comment like, we know in time Vandy football is going to be the best program in the country. And it's like, do you mean academic program? Are you counting the football as well? But yeah, tempered it down a little bit. But I mean, you're right. Like James Franklin showed, and he's obviously always a guy that's going to be discussed for every big job. James Franklin is. I mean, he's head coach at Penn State right now. Obviously, he's a good coach. He's a good recruiter. But he kind of laid out that maybe you can do some things there. Maybe you can sneak in a 9-win season at Vanderbilt. I think it requires probably some other things to happen. Like when you look at when James Franklin was doing that, some of the other programs, I think, around the SEC were kind of down, right? But,
especially Tennessee.
Especially Tennessee. That was a big one. But, even looking at Vandy's schedule this year, I mean, I do think Clark Lee improved those guys a lot from, year over year. I mean, they were a better team overall, I think, last season. And you look at their opening slate of games, their first 6 or 7 games, really their first 7 games, I think there's some potential for wins in there. I mean, you've got Hawaii and Alabama A&M, right? You do have to go to Wake Forest, but you play UNLV on the road. They've been horrific. And then you play Kentucky and Missouri at home. You go play a Florida team who has a lot of questions. So I think they have a chance to make a little noise. When I say that, I don't mean, hey, they're going to go challenge Georgia and Kirby Smart. But I think they have a chance to improve themselves, this season.
I mean, Chris, I'm with you. I could see them winning. Well, I mean, heck, man, I might be able to see them winning all of those games. I don't think they will. But Hawaii, Alabama A&M, Wake Forest, UNLV, Kentucky, Missouri. Again,
I mean, it's not entirely fanciful to think that they can make a little run in that stretch.
It's not. And look, I mean, just what you and Wes, have always concentrated your careers on, man, is the acquisition of talent. I mean, this is college. This is college football, man. You go get some players and see what you can do. But that's what Vandy lacks. They don't have enough talent, and the school is not going to acquiesce too much in terms of what it wants. But I remember Bobby Johnson at least got a little, kind of what Lou Holtz did at Notre Dame. Hey, for the kids that are on the border here, let me get them in and let's see what they can do. I'm not asking you to tone it down academically, but let me get them in and let's see what we can work with. And if they can do a little bit of that, like I said, why can't you be what Northwestern was to some degree, or what Stanford has been to some degree? Nobody wants you to dumb down your academics, no pun intended, but anyway, we'll see. But it was interesting. But again, then there's Kirby, who, let's face it, y'all, if he doesn't win a title, dadgummit, Kirby, why didn't you win another title?
Standing on the table
it's sort
for
of the opposite end of the spectrum. I mean, that's all they expect in Athens anymore.
Well, and to talk about expectations, so let's go to another program, another coach we heard from yesterday. So Jimbo Fisher chatted yesterday. Lots of words per minute. Could you catch everything he said, Jay? Were you able to transcribe?
No, but I knew exactly. Somebody did. God bless him, because we have the transcript available on the web, and I'm like, I knew what he was going to do. That's what he does. I'm like, Jimbo, it's okay, man. You can slow down a little. But maybe he can't. I don't know if that dude drinks 5-hour energies. I don't know what he does, but he just doesn't want you to ask him a question.
There's a development opportunity there where somebody can come up with the AI that can transcribe Jimbo Fisher's press conferences quickly and accurately. But he did, in all seriousness, have an interesting comment. The one about the offense and Bobby Petrino, he did not want to answer that. Wes and I were talking about this yesterday. It was kind of silly. It was your typical, paranoid SEC head coach answer. But he was asked something to the extent, I'm paraphrasing, of, hey, is Bobby Petrino going to call plays? And you would think, with all
should be a very simple answer.
Very simple, right? Because
it's a yes or no question.
It's yes or no, especially if you're Jimbo, it sounds kind of weird. You're a little bit on the hot seat. Everybody wants you to give up the keys to the offense, which you've been very reluctant to do during your career. And you're bringing in Bobby Petrino, who, by the way, is really good at it. And he's like, nah. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see. He might call him. He might make some suggestions.
I believe he used the word hopefully.
Hopefully.
And I'm like,
yeah,
it is literally your decision.
You're not bringing Bobby Petrino in and not having him call the plays, in my opinion. I think the harder part, in my opinion, is Jimbo Fisher letting go. And we see a lot of coaches do that. I don't want to apply it to Will Muschamp, who was a defensive coach, but I really think that there were times that when what sunk Will, amongst other things, was an inability to let go of control and trust other people to do their job, which is something we saw Shane last year take some control of the offense from Marcus middle of the season. I was talking about that off air with a guy from Memphis earlier. Yeah, y'all remember, I think it was the A&M game. 3 carries for Marshawn in the first half and then 17 or 18 in the second half. It's like, Marcus, put the ball in the hands of people that can, use the ball effectively. And Shane, my point is, Shane trusts his coaches to do their job in a large way, but when he doesn't, then he'll take control. I don't know if Jimbo can do that. That's going to be the hard part for him, I think, as a person, is can I give it to this guy? And I've heard a lot of people kind of whispering, man, that could be a real personality clash. So, but I'm with you, Wes. It should be an easy answer. Yes, Bobby's going to call plays. No, I'm going to call plays. It really is that simple. But I don't think you're paying Bobby Petrino $1.5 to install an offense and then not manage it. That's my opinion.
Right. All right, Jay, we'll let you go. Now you're going to get in there and listen to Kirby speak for a few minutes before jumping
Kirby
back
time.
on.
And then let y'all know real quick. We got Dari Noka today from the SEC Network. We got the great Tony Barnhart, one of my favorite people. We got Bill Hancock. And we got Matt Moscona from ESPN Radio Baton Rouge following up from Brian Kelly's visit yesterday. So a packed halftime show coming your way, plus sound from Kirby and Clark, too, and whatever else going on. So you boys have fun. Appreciate you. Talk to you in a little bit.
All right. Thanks, Jay. And again, all that coming up on the halftime show starting at noon. We'll react to a little bit of sound from yesterday's Media Day coming up next on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Hey, switching is easy. We do it all the time with a lot of different things. One area you may not think about switching very often is on your insurance, but maybe you should. Go take a look at it. Do you know what type of coverage do you have? Do you know what you're paying? Do you know, basically, when it comes down to it, do you have good insurance? If you don't, or if you're not sure, you may want to give our friends at Amy Mason Cup State Farm a call or visit her website at amymasoncup.com to see how her team can help you, just like her team helped my family. They're ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood, and they're ready to help you see how you can switch and save. It's easy to switch and save with Amy Mason Cup State Farm. Again, it's amymasoncup.com or 803-772-5554. All sorts of insurance policies, home, auto, business, boat, renter's life, anything that you may need access to on the insurance front. Amy Mason Cup State Farm, her team, they have you covered. She's a South Carolina native. She's a local agent, and she and her team can give you a personalized quote to meet your needs and help you save. Her office is just off the St. Andrews Road exit off I-26, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4 in Columbia. That's Ashland Park Plaza. So if you want to learn how to switch and save with great insurance, give Amy Mason Cup State Farm a call today, 803-772-5554, amymasoncup.com. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
We'll react to what we heard at Media Days yesterday coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5 The Game.
Former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan shares real stories from real people from all walks of life on The Sean Ryan Show.
Dr. Michael Bagnell.
In the brain, we have networks that work together. Think about like a toggle switch. Well, in the default mode network, where we have a sense of relaxing, taking things in, it's also where we have a hope generated for our future. Someone goes to military service, sees extremely traumatic things. They just seen so much damage. They may end up shutting down this default mode network.
The Sean Ryan Show on YouTube or wherever you listen.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you as we follow all things SEC Media Days, watching it on the SEC Network right now. Kirby Smart getting set to take the podium, but things led off yesterday morning with Greg Sankey giving a very long opening monologue. We carried it for you here on 107.5 The Game. I think it clocked in at about 30 minutes before somebody was finally able to ask him a question, but a lot of things happening in this offseason for Commissioner Sankey to address. And one of the things that he talked about, something that it's kind of flying under the radar with everything going on with NIL and whatnot, is the rule changes coming to college football in 2023. And one of those big things, obviously, being the change to the clock itself no longer stopping on first downs except for in the final 2 minutes of the first half. And here is what Commissioner Sankey had to say about that yesterday.
There was research done on kind of the look and the feel, so there'll be some adjustments as things move along rapidly. The reality of the game of college football is you have a variety of offensive approaches. In some games, I don't think you'll even notice it because things happen so rapidly now. I think people need to study. When I talked about spending time with John McDade tomorrow in this room, that's about learning and making sure one understands how the new rules will operate. Part of the learning experience is you do reduce the number of plays in a game. It is an incremental step, though, to keep the game moving along at an interesting pace. I'll use that phrase. That's my invention, not the Rules Committee. We're going to have to be mindful of the outcomes and mindful that perhaps there are other adjustments that can be made. It's interesting to read the history of college football, so I just finished a book that goes back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. Jim Thorpe's biography was the most recent, and realized, the passing game was inserted 100 years ago to college football. And we still have elements of the rules from 100 years ago that guide our thinking around college football. And I think it's an appropriate update.
Definitely a long answer there, and kind of going back to what he was saying at the beginning, there is an expectation that the number of plays per game is going to be down, and you would imagine that scoring is going to be down just a little bit, but this is one of those kind of things that we're not really going to know how much of an effect it's going to have on the game until we start playing here in a couple of weeks.
Not a fan. I think let's compare it to Major League Baseball and rule changes there and things to quote unquote speed up the game. Those rules have actually been fantastic. But what the Major League Baseball rule changes have done is they've just sped up the standing around time. You actually don't have less baseball involved. The thing that I get that you want to sort of put all games in this nice little box where you can know exactly how long they're going to last, so you can schedule out your next game for TV, and so you can schedule out all your commercials and know exactly what you're doing with. And the less variety there is, the less variance on how long these games are. And in this case, the shorter the games are, the more easily you can maybe plan that out, and you can fit in more commercials or more games on TV, even potentially long term. However, I hate the fact that even with the addition of this rule, you only said we're going back to the regular rule where it stops, clock stops 2 minutes in, 2 minutes left in the game. Because I feel like the end game is in place much earlier in the fourth quarter than just 2 minutes.
Sure.
And so I think I could stomach this a little bit easier if maybe it was final 6 or even final 4 minutes of a game that you go back to your traditional rules, because I just dislike rules that actually sort of change the way winners and losers are being determined. Throughout the course of the game, it's less football, but maybe doesn't really affect things a ton.
Sure.
But to me, this is a pretty big adjustment to the way games are completed.
When you look at like some of the NBA rule changes in the past, they encourage scoring. They encourage pace of play, right? So, compare a 1990s NBA game to now. Even though I haven't commissioned a study on it, there's probably more stoppages, because if you breathe on somebody, sometimes it's a foul, right? And so then you're going to the foul line, and so there's more opportunities to score. Then there's a lot of reasons that there's more scoring and nowadays in professional basketball. The point is, to go off what Wes is saying, those rule changes, when they're put in, they enhance the enjoyment of the game because you're seeing more scoring, more fouls, more silly fouls called, more flopping, et cetera, but it creates more excitement, it creates more scoring. Now with this college football rule, we're kind of going the opposite way. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to get less plays in a game, we think, and I mean, that's not much of a leap to say that.
Sure.
We're still going to get the same amount of commercials. There's no doubt about that.
Might get even more.
Red hat guy will be on the field just as many times. The most disliked guy in the entire stadium.
I really don't like that guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I don't like him. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't really get the reasoning behind this, like at its core. You're shortening the length to the game.
I imagine there was a lot of pressure from networks as well, because if you look at it, a lot of college football games tend to float around that 3.5 hour mark, which if
4
you look
hours,
how they kind of block these things off, they usually don't put them in a 4 hour window, and you're always having the next game starting on ESPN News or ESPN2 or whatever. So I imagine there was some pressure on the back end from the networks to maybe clean this up a little bit, and I'm guessing that it will bring the time of games down pretty significantly. But as you mentioned there, it's also going to force teams to play a lot faster. And I'd be interested to know from the perspective of Lane Kiffin or Hugh Freeze, an offensive-minded coach, how maybe their approach to calling games is different with this rule change now in place.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think about this on the fly, the exact effects of this. Some teams may actually play things slower. Because it depends on your strategy. If you're an up-tempo team, you're probably getting to the line of scrimmage and you're snapping the ball quickly. Anyway, if you know that if you want to go Lou Holtz, we're going to run the football, we're going to play defense, we're going to try to shorten the game because we know we're outmatched. Maybe this plays into the other side of this where you actually can keep the clock moving, obviously, in more situations. I will say this, I'll play against I'll play devil's advocate to my own opinion. They've gotten so quick a lot of times at setting the chains during the course of a game. Mm-hmm. It almost feels like they are slower. They're more deliberate about stopping the clock, setting the chains, and letting a team almost get lined up in end-of-game situations, it feels like to me. Whereas a lot of times, there were times last year being in the stadium, it felt like they were almost doing a running clock anyway because they get everything lined up so quickly, they go ahead and set everything. Sure. But as far as end of game, again, that's just where I think this affects a lot. If you got 3.5 minutes to go in a game, you are very much changing the way a game could play out.
Yeah, do more people sit on the ball, a little bit more? The 2011 Bama LSU game, 9-6 in overtime. I was going back and looking at that. Looks like LSU had 17 passing attempts and 41 rushes. So they ran, and Bama looks like ran about 60 offensive plays in that game, in a game that was in overtime.
Right.
And I don't know how long that game lasted. But I don't think we go back to like the dinosaur ages, but sure, it could be interesting with how these offensive coaches, how they structure your game plan.
And you mentioned some teams particularly, maybe trying to slow it down a little bit. Something we see a lot in the NFL, long sustained drives, especially when you're running the ball a lot, have the potential to chew up 8, 9, sometimes even 10 minutes the longer that they go. And that's something we haven't really seen a lot in college football. But you get a team like Georgia that's trying to milk the clock at the end of the game or something like that. They can realistically run off 9, 10 minutes before the other team touches the ball again in the fourth quarter just by taking advantage of this rule change.
Yeah, we were talking the other day about the Auburn-South Carolina game, 2006. Auburn dominates. They have the ball an entire quarter, third quarter, I think it was, of that game. So will be interesting. One that I think I need to revisit this. I think I like this because it doesn't seem like a big deal at all. Smaller rule change within that same package is if you have end of first quarter, end of third quarter, if there's a penalty, it just carries over to the next quarter.
Yeah.
So there's not an untimed down. That might save, I don't know, a couple minutes off the game. I don't have a problem with that one. Of course,
that's here or there.
That's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not something you're going to see.
It may save a little bit of time.
Sure.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
It basically could shave off one play every
fifth or sixth game, 10th game,
if that, who knows what the data will even say, but it's not really.
That's something you're not going to notice.
Yeah, you won't notice, and it's not really going to affect
the
end of game situation whatsoever.
Sure.
So I'm trying to look at this real quickly. Have y'all seen? So there's no changes to the actual play clock. Is that right?
To my knowledge, that's correct.
Okay.
It's just the game clock itself.
Okay.
So, and there's always unintended consequences with these kind of rule changes that I'm sure we'll see come to a head at some point early on in the season, and there may need to be some adjustments in the offseason, but definitely going to change the way that you watch college football this upcoming fall. We'll come back on the other side and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Our friends over at Integrated Media, Michael and Nathan, can do so much for your home. I've said this a lot, but if you need something as small and as simple, may not be as simple as you think, as mounting a TV to something as complex as an entire smart home system, whatever your needs are from an audio-visual standpoint inside your home, they can do it for you. They can install a security system complete with cameras and monitoring, TV installations, audio, video, home theater, video games. They can do one of those things, or they can tie it all into one integrated smart home system for you. What is a smart home system? Well, that's a way you can bring your home into the modern age. You can control from your smartphone everything from lighting, your thermostat, sound systems, television, security cameras, and your alarm system. Even have preset lighting themes. Too hot or too cold, you can change that with just the touch of a button from your smartphone with your smart home service from Integrated Media. It's getting hot outside, as we know. Lots of people spending time outdoors. Check out what they can do for you on your outdoor patio, your screen porch, or if you're heading indoors because you are too hot, in your man cave. They can do so many custom solutions for you, audio-visual solutions from Integrated Media. 803-948-8327. Check out some inspiration photos and examples of past work. Integrated Media Columbia on Facebook and Instagram, or integratedmediainc.com. Again, that's our friends Michael and Nathan at Integrated Media. 803-948-8327. Give them a call.
All right, we'll wrap up the today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour coming up next on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris with you for a few more minutes before heading back out to SEC Media Days with Jay on the halftime show. For the next couple of minutes, just wanted to hit on something Wes and I were talking about yesterday, and that was Malcolm Ziglar, as he did announce his commitment yesterday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Unfortunately, not going the way of the Gamecocks, as he did commit to UNC, where he will go next season. And I had no idea this happened, but he had a pretty cool commitment video highlighting a moment back from when he was a kid and his dad returning home from military service that took place at a UNC home game. So certainly a lot of special connections there to the Tar Heels, but quite a miss for South Carolina, unfortunately.
Yeah, if I had known that video existed, then I don't think I would have given South Carolina any shot to land him. Pretty cool moment for his family. You can go check that out on Malcolm's Twitter. Malcolm Ziglar's at Malcolm Ziglar. But yeah, his dad surprised him with a return from tour of duty as a, I don't know, 8-year-old kid, just a guess, at UNC's football stadium. So I'm sure that probably created quite a bit of just feelings that it doesn't appear left when he became a top target for them. South Carolina gave it their best run here, from what I was told on the South Carolina end. Just getting him away from home, ended up being a really tough pull. That the location played a big part there. And this kid can play. I would say that regardless of where he went. I'm a big fan of his game. I kind of compared him athletically to a local guy like a Shaq Rowland, as far as just being long and the ability to move smoothly and effortlessly on the field. Played some receiver. Played some other positions, but profiles, he's listed as a safety. I actually think this guy probably, depending on scheme and opponent, could be a cornerback potentially as well. So good get for North Carolina. South Carolina tried to play spoiler. It was not to be.
Yeah, this is one where, Wes, I think it could have closed out the safety class for South Carolina because you have David Busey out of Savannah. You have Kelvin Hunter. He's an in-state guy. Malcolm Ziglar. Now, he's got some positional versatility, but he would have really put the cherry on top, I think, for a potential three-man safety class.
He's a dude.
If you're South Carolina, you got some other ones out there, some other options. He would have been a really good one. So we'll see where things go from here. Still a lot of time this summer to follow a lot more recruiting storylines.
Absolutely, and that'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with Jay and Terry with Jay live at Media Days, coming up next here on 107.5 The Game.
You know how great your house looks and smells when it's just been cleaned? So fresh. And somehow, a clean house makes your head feel fresher too. With a housekeeper from Care, you can reset your house and your head as often as you like for less than you think. Find a great housekeeper, set a schedule that works for you, and check cleaning off your to-do list so you can put your mind to other, more fun things. Get the housekeeping help you need at Care.com.